So I saw this post. It says, girls should bring up astrology on a first date, not because it's an accurate measure of compatibility, but because it self-identifies men who are arrogant, condescending, and incapable of entertaining opinions they disagree with. I thought that this was interesting advice, but I think that I slightly misinterpreted what they're saying. In the mental image that I get, they're instructing like a Dawkins-style atheist girl that she should pretend to be a little superstitious in order to achieve some objective. And I want to be clear, I don't necessarily disagree with the objective. I think that what did it say? Arrogant, condescending, and incapable of entertaining opinions, so like dude bros or Elon fans or that kind of thing. Yeah, figuring out a way to identify and filter those people out of your life is probably beneficial just in general. I think part of the problem is, and the reason that it didn't immediately resonate with me, is that I have a lifelong problem where I seem to be attracted to sneaky girls. And so I have, as a self-defense mechanism, become very defensive to when women have like some kind of a hidden agenda. Like, for example, when I was dating my girlfriend, who later became my wife back in 2001, she pretended to have multiple personality disorder. She said she did it because she was bored. And so the time that I should have spent getting to know her as a person was instead spent getting to know these made-up fake personas that she had. And, well, she was later diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I have identified that I either attract cluster B personality people, or I'm attracted to them, or there's a mutual thing going on. So I don't really know what that is, but I'm very averse to this notion of people being fake. So advising people to be fake on purpose seems like it's encouraging exactly the opposite of the kind of behavior that we should be exuding. It seems like we should be ourselves and hopefully, things work out. In my mind, in my overly simplistic worldview of love and romance, the boy and the girl aren't like up to something. It isn't like some kind of weird war that they're waging where they need special tactics, in order to defeat their opponent. They're just getting along, they're just having a good time, and everything's great. And so it seems to me like starting off from the position of, let's use deception from the get-go. On your very first encounter with somebody, you should be being fake in order to, hatch this plan to get them to out themselves. That just seems weird to me. So I showed it to my daughter, and she disagreed. She thought that it was a good idea. And I think that our fundamental disagreement was whether or not... Well, here's the thing. I'm currently reassessing myself. So the way that I initially read it was that you should pretend to define yourself in terms of astrology, as opposed to just casually bringing it up. So it's possible that me and my daughter fundamentally read this in a different way. And so, we're not even talking about the same thing. And I can't help but wonder if my own aversion to what I perceive as, I don't know, fakeness or acting or being up to something or having a hidden motivation, whatever the hell you want to call being sneaky, having an agenda. Maybe I was too quick to box this into that camp. And I want to be perfectly clear. I am equally opposed to some of this dude bro dating advice that you get where they're saying you gotta put on an act and you have to be a jerk on purpose. And I mean, all of that seems like it stands in the way of forming a real human connection. Now, simply mentioning something to screen other people, I suppose I don't disagree with that in concept. It's just, it offends my sensibilities that you're misrepresenting who you are for the express purpose of deceiving and manipulating the other person, which doesn't seem like the basis of a healthy relationship. But I have to acknowledge that there's gray areas here, and there are different ways of bringing up astrology that aren't necessarily whatever my brain first went to. I'm not really sure what my brain first went to. I've never had... Well, that's not true. That is not true. I have had girls mention astrology, and they're all very, very serious about it. And you know what? Maybe that informs my opinion of what it means to, in quotes, bring up astrology. I mean, if you... I've never had somebody just casually say, oh, by the way, I'm a Pisces. How was your day? You know, it's always, I'm a Pisces, and that means something. What are you? Let's determine whether or not our future is compatible based on some preconception of what these labels mean. Now, there was an incident where maybe I was arrogant, condescending, and incapable of entertaining opinions that I disagreed with. There were two girls. This happened about 20 years ago. And oh God, what was the story? I'm screwing up the story. But basically, she was convinced that astrology was real because the last three guys that she had dated had all been the same sign, and they had all been, had similar personalities and flaws. And, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but there's something other than their sign that's similar about these guys, right? These are guys that this specific person has dated. That doesn't seem irrelevant. That seems very relevant. And I've spent 20 years thinking, wow, that person is an idiot. And, so yeah, maybe they want to filter me out. But, if somebody's just like, oh, I just think it's silly and I just look it up or something, that probably wouldn't bother me that much. It's any ideology, anything that you believe in. It could be something that I've never heard of in my life. It's like, oh, I need to wave this stick to the north before we have a discussion. It's like, okay, well, I'm not familiar with that, but sure sounds like some bullshit. That is kind of how my brain goes. But I don't think that I would say that. I would be like, oh, tell me what that's about. And, try to be supportive. One time, a guy, Dick Coughlin, said, everybody gets one batshit crazy thing. I think he said idea or belief. I don't remember exactly, but I've sort of generalized it to, it can be a habit or a ritual or, just anything. And I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Because if somebody really is just completely off I don't know what an appropriate expression is, but if they're just, crazy, in the colloquial sense, they're going to demonstrate that time and time again. And it doesn't have to be based off one specific thing that they do or one specific thing that they believe. Just earlier today, somebody thought that this picture of Venus wasn't real. And, I don't know. Somebody responded to them as if they had some sort of a valid criticism or something. Well, what they said was that's not what Venus looks like. But I could read between the lines. I could see where they were going with this. And the person was like, oh, do you have a better picture of Venus? I'm like, yeah, this person doesn't believe Venus is real, doesn't believe space is real. And I went on to list several other things, being a jackass. They don't believe hot dogs or the color red is real. It's all a government conspiracy. The conspiracy theorist came back, and his response to me was proving my point. He's like, oh, I bet you got the jab, didn't you? And you probably believe this and this and this. And I'm like, well, you know what? I do. I do believe those things, and I did get the jab. But you're not doing your side any favors. You're not proving what you're demonstrating my point. My point was that you believe every conspiracy theory, and your argument is, oh, you're dumb because you don't believe every conspiracy theory. That's not really the own that you think that it is. Well, anyways, as for screening people, I originally went in on OkCupid and answered just thousands of questions. Because it was kind of fun, there's a question, you answer it. There's a question, you answer it. There's a question, you answer it. But people will look at these questions and they will form radically wrong opinions of you based on their interpretation or misinterpretation of one of the questions. And I don't really know how to reconcile that against... I do believe that sometimes you can make generalizations about people, just like I did with that conspiracy theorist. My spidey sense told me that he believed every conspiracy theory, including but not limited to space is fake. He might be a flat earther. He might be a moon landing denier. He might be all of the above. I don't really care. I don't really care to know. But it's possible that I could have been wrong. But when you answer like 1,300 questions on OkCupid, people start filtering you based on whatever their specific trigger issues are. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that is fine. And I need to be fine with that being fine. But I just can't help but look at these misunderstandings and say, maybe we shouldn't do things to encourage misunderstandings if what we're trying to do is encourage understanding in the first place. And this is not a thought that I've had in isolation. This isn't a thought that I had specifically related to dating. I don't think people realize just how much of American culture is the idea that we are right and other people are wrong, and it is not only our right to try to change other people's minds, but is our outright obligation. And this is not unique to the right wing. This is not unique to the anti-astrology crowd. This is endemic. You see it on the left, you see it on the right, you see it everywhere. People angry that you like the wrong sports team or something. And I don't think that kind of toxicity exists everywhere. Well, it may exist everywhere, but I think that it is more prevalent here in the United States than, say, I don't know, developed Western European nations, for example, France or Germany or something. You'll encounter, not encourage, people who make claims about things, but then you find that the weight that they put on it is much lower. So if you're looking for cultural similarity, yeah, it's going to exist everywhere. At the end of the day, we're all humans. But I really think that sometimes we're culturally conditioned to value things more. And black and white thinking specifically, and I'm not excluding myself. I am absolutely a victim of cultural indoctrination in this regard. The idea that there's a right and that there's a wrong, and that something in between right and wrong is just wrong. And I like to think that I'm kind of maturing past that as I get older, but it's still there. It's still there in the back of my mind, and it's not the easiest thing to get rid of. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Yes, I am very sensitive to girl plots. If people are going to be sneaky, if they're going to be up to something, it doesn't matter what their objective is, whether it's like, just absolutely subjugating you and separating you from your friends, to just more minor cases why can't you just be honest? Why can't you just be two honest people trying to get along and having fun? Why do you have to be up to something? Why do you have to have an objective? Why do you have to have a motive? And so, for that reason, I actually think that this is a good idea for people who think that it's a good idea. You know, if you want to be somebody who incites drama for the sake of inciting drama in order to screen people who don't like drama, then knock yourself out. I would like to filter people like that out of my dating. Not that I date. If I were to date. Yeah, and you know what? Bringing up something because you think it might trigger the other person, maybe that isn't inciting drama. But I'm saying that's where my brain goes. That's how my brain interprets it. And that is the position from which I think that it shouldn't be done. Now, I actually got a response from somebody who probably is the exact kind of person that this post wants to filter out of a potential dating pool. And he says that applying that logic, guys should just bring up astrology in a, derogatory fashion before the girl does, for the sake of, seeing if that's going to offend her. I don't know if that would actually work in this specific context, since if the girl didn't bring it up first, she wouldn't necessarily be defensive, particularly if she isn't the kind of person who takes it particularly seriously, which is what I was objecting to. For the record, I never once thought that somebody who actually believes in astrology shouldn't bring that up to make sure that it's not going to be an issue later, for the same reason that somebody who is super big into the Jesus shouldn't bring that up. Or, if somebody is if somebody's a Muslim or in any religion, it can be any religion. I'm not going to sit here and list every single religion, but the point is, if you are a believer in a religion and you have even the slightest reason to believe that a person that you're considering dating might have an issue with that, then by all means get that out of the way,